One of the reasons why Mario Kart 8 is one of my favourite games of all time is its massive track selection. However, there's obviously going to be some duds. So here are my 10 least favourite tracks. This will be based off my personal opinion on the tracks, and yes, the Booster Course Pass is included. With that all said, let's get started with number 10. Waluigi Pinball is probably the most popular track in the franchise, and considering how much the fanbase seems to value how graphically impressive a track is when determining a track's value, it makes sense. On Wave 2's launch day, one thing I constantly saw people trying to look out for was the sound effects. If anything, it seemed to be the priority over the track itself. To be honest though, I cannot blame them as the rest of the track feels non-existent. After all, for a course called Waluigi Pinball, you don't spend a lot of time on the pinball table. Instead, most of your time is spent on a generic looking carpet. Circuit tracks also get a lot of hate for looking generic, but at least they have some substance. The main things circuit tracks have over Waluigi Pinball are off-road shortcuts, because this track has a disappointing 0. So what we have now is just some normal carpet with giant balls and no shortcuts. Wow, great. But then we have the pinball table part, which makes me wish the rest of the track was just more boring carpet, because this is just a straightaway, and a long one at that. The layout on its own, aside from that boring straightaway, is alright, but I cannot understand why this track gets so much praise, aside from the sound effects which can be found on most of the crossover tracks. The one single thing I can praise about this track is that it's better in this game than in 7 and DS, because 200cc allows for all the slow parts to be dealt with quicker, but that doesn't really save it from being on this list. Dry Desert is on the opposite end to Waluigi Pinball. This is not a very popular track unless you are a professional item smuggler. This is because of the massive amount of sand covering this map. This leads to the track looking relatively bland for its duration, with there being literally nothing but a few pyramids and some sphinx in the background. Granted, the course still looks nice, but nothing too special. Don't get all excited over that layout either, since it is incredibly basic, with the most exciting thing being an oasis, and the fact you can trick off some pillars. It's weird because Nintendo chose to remake the 3 worst Double Dash courses for this game, and then they also decided to remake Yoshi Circuit and Waluigi Stadium. This course had no reason to be remade, with a few unimpactful changes leaving it to be a bland course which is just about as good as the mediocre Double Dash version. One single thing I can say I'm happy about is that they tried harder with Toad's Turnpike than they did with Figure 8 Circuit. By that, I mean they added in cars, which I recognise as a very difficult thing to implement, which has never been done before in a Mario Kart track. Okay, to Toad's Turnpike's credit, this is the first ever track themed around cars, but seriously, did we need this to be a Figure 8? The layout of this map on Mario Kart 8 leads to the track having 2 main problems. 1, the course feels very slow, and 2, the cars are very easy to avoid. The course feels very slow because the turns take a while to get around, and the added anti-gravity is slower than the normal route. This leads to slow pacing, and therefore a boring track to drive. So if the layout is boring, then surely the cars would help make up for it, but this leads into problem 2. The cars are very spaced out from each other. However, even then, you could still have trouble avoiding them if the layout made them get more in your way. The most trouble you'll be facing is having to slightly move to the left because there's nothing forcing you to move around the cars in a weird way. Shroom Ridge and Berlin Byways prove that the cars can be an actual hazard, since the layouts for those are quite twisty, especially Shroom Ridge. These 2 tracks give me no reason to choose Toad's Turnpike, and that will stay that way. The only reason why this course isn't lower is because the gliding is fun. However, that's all the praise I can realistically give this map. Maple Treeway was always a good course in Mario Kart Wii and 7. The course is also amazing in Tour, so naturally you would expect it to be incredible in Mario Kart 8. However, I do not like Maple Treeway in Mario Kart 8. The layout for starters feels much easier in 8, along with feeling less exciting, even though 200cc literally makes almost any track more exciting than how it was in its original game. I think this is because the course as a whole feels a lot slower. The cannon lasts longer, the Wiggler section feels empty because the Wigglers are really easy to avoid in this version, so that's just a boring straightaway. The music as well is far calmer than the original. Also, I just genuinely hate the remix of Maple Treeway in this game. It feels like the first half of the song is just kazoos, which I know it isn't, but still. The original did have a few issues, however, those still retain in Mario Kart 8. For starters, the course has only one shortcut, which is at the very start of the map. The glider at the end sucks as well. It worked in 7 because gliders are actually fun in that game, but the same could not be said for the Mario Kart 8 one. So now what we have is a graphically ugly, musically horrible, and layout-wise worse version of what was a good track in Mario Kart Wii. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that the course looks absolutely atrocious. Despite having a lot of textures, they all look low quality. And the skybox is now just really ugly, with it just being orange and yellow when the original was a blend between blue and orange. And to top it all off, the model doesn't even look made for the track. And well, yeah, it isn't. So overall, massive downgrade to the Wii 7 and Tour version. Why is this track so popular? No, genuinely why. I understood it a bit for pinball, but seriously, this is such a basic track, trying to be covered up by a single road texture. Well, it's probably because of one thing. N64 is an extravagant, sectional, and beautiful showcase of what a Rainbow Road should be. I don't think I've met a single person who likes both N64 Rainbow Road and Wii U Rainbow Road. So this entry in the list is going to be a comparison between these two tracks. Mario Kart 8's version of Rainbow Road is probably the most controversial track in the franchise. This is most likely due to its unique approach to the Rainbow Road formula by making it set in a space station. This theme is used in the track design to make a conveyor belt section similar to the one on Toad's Factory, whilst N64 Rainbow Road just has wavy road which barely even works half the time, and is just you doing tricks. It also fits with the whole anti-gravity gimmick, since the idea of a mechanical Rainbow Road is futuristic, and the music is even stylistically different as well to fit the futuristic feel of the track. And before you say the rainbow isn't as rainbow as most Rainbow Roads, it's more rainbow than the one on 3DS Rainbow Road, and you guys seem to adore that one. Now comparing this to the N64 one, which has 0 shortcuts, a really basic layout, and it's just a rainbow in the sky. Also, this is supposed to be the finale track of the base Mario Kart 8 in the Wii U. This is super easy. Really soft turns, a weak theme, and like, the Wii U version literally does all of this better. It blows my mind how popular this map is, and I don't get why you guys enjoy it so much. I'm going to go insane if I have to talk about this Rainbow Road map any longer. Let's just move on. Wow, Tokyo Blur, a city track, what a shocker. Okay, my actual thoughts on the city tracks though is that they are really good, however Tokyo Blur is not one of those I think highly of. This track seems to follow through the same fate that 3DS Woohoo Loop has, which is despite being 3 sections long, the track is so bare bones. Long straightaways are this track's favourite thing to throw at you. Along with that, the only shortcut in this map which you can do is a ramp cut, which is done on 50cc, which is only available laps 1 and 2. So there's no comeback potential, the layout itself is boring, so what else could possibly be wrong with the track? Well, it's the theming. Okay, I don't have as much of an issue with the theming as other people, but if we're going to be driving straight the entire time, at least give us something interesting to look at. Singapore did that, along with having phenomenal music, and also it does have more of a layout than Tokyo Blur. To Tokyo Blur's credit though, it does have alright music. With that all said, Tokyo Blur is 100% my least favourite city track in Mario Kart 8, and I doubt that's changing anytime soon. This one should be quick. Donut Plains 3 was never many people's favourite anyways, since it was so generic. However, that is not my main issue as much as the music bores me. Instead, it's the level design. Some roads are extremely narrow, and they have the audacity to add rain physics, making drifting harder but also feel worse. I'm not going to make this entry go on any longer than it has to. You already know why people don't like the map. It looks boring, plays boring, musically is boring. Let's just move on. Baby Park is a track you either love or hate, and I'm sure you can already tell what I think of the track. Due to the nature of this track, with it being a very small 7-lap oval, it is entirely luck dependent, with everyone being so cramped. In simple terms, I do not like gambling my chances for a win in Mario Kart because I prefer tracks with some sort of skill required. So why is it not my least favourite track in the game? Well, with the right custom item settings, this track can sometimes provide a good time. The aesthetic is also great, however, it also makes me disappointed that we can't explore the rest of the park because of how detailed it looks. However, what could possibly be worse than the most luck-based track in the franchise? Well... Alpine Pass is a relatively basic track similarly to the ones we previously talked about. Well, in theory it should be, and it mostly is. After all, the main thing about this track is a really basic giant gliding section where you get to look at these ugly plastic cliffs and that's it. I know Shroom Ridge has the textureless grass and cliffs, but at least you're focusing on other stuff during the race. In Alpine Pass, all you're doing is looking at the ugly scenery, and that is so great, because half of the track is just you gliding and looking at the ugly scenery. Seriously, half of it. And guess what? After the anti-gravity section, you have another gliding section, where you take one of the dumbest design shortcuts in the entire game. The idea is that you go to the left and use the air blowing out the two pipes to gain elevation and land at the cave entrance. But half the time, the pipes don't even function because Mario Kart 8 has such restrictive gliders, resorting to you instead tricking off this tiny pipe. That's the big issue with the track as a whole. The gliders aren't fun because Mario Kart 8 has the worst glider controls in the entire franchise. So after that, all we have left is an anti-gravity section, which is worse than the Mario Kart 7 version, and a cave which is worse than the Wario Goldmine one. Was there any point in bringing this back aside from remixing the music, which is just the worst version of London Loop's music? No, and I wish this track just remained in Torrent 7. Now we have the honourable mentions. These are the tracks which barely didn't make it onto the list. Starting off is 3DS Rainbow Road. For starters, the road is mostly blue, so I'm being ripped off. The planets don't add much, and the layout is boring for the second half, which is just filled with eye candy. Wii Coconut Mall. The course is far too orange, and the only shortcut is at the start of the map. Was never that good on the Wii, and as much as I want to say this is an improvement, some parts play really awkwardly. Our final honourable mention is Big Blue. The course starts off fine, but is far too short thanks to the entire second lap being basically non-existent because of a really easy ultra shortcut. Just play Mute City instead. Now that I've got all those out the way, time for my number 1 least favourite track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I doubt this is a surprise to people who were subbed from the earlier days of my channel. Except Arena was never needed. No, seriously, this is in what should have been a retro track spot. But I guess doing another crossover track was so required. The track layout itself is probably the worst in the entire game, and I personally think the franchise. At least DS's versions of Baby Park and Figure 8 Circuit had snaking. This has nothing going for it. The only things you interact with are the randomized ramps, which don't act at all differently from each other, with you just having to shake your controller since that's the most consistent way to do tricks in this game. Not a great start already, so what else does this track have in it? Nothing. Literally nothing. Unlike Baby Park, the items don't even add anything since most of them don't even work well with the ramps. And the aesthetic. Oh my god, this map looks so boring. The entire map is just the same looking stadium throughout. Nothing changes aside from what ramps you're tricking off of, although that barely counts. And shortcut wise, we have an extremely easy shroom through the grass cut. Mario Kart Stadium had many grass cuts harder than this, and that's the first track in the game. And if your counter argument to all of what I'm saying is tricking off the ramps is fun, well how about I tell you that there are 77 other tracks with places to trick off which have way more depth than this mess. And that's my list. What's your least favourite tracks in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe? Is my video terrible because I put 7 fan favourites on the list? I'd love to know. And with all that said, I'll see you next time. Bye.